What's up? Back with another CR video. And in today's video, I think we're going to do things a little different. I wanted to put out a what I like to call a top 10 tips video. I know there's stuff already out there. I don't know if there's any new stuff. I would still say that a lot of the basic fundamentals are still the same as it was years ago to today, but I don't think there's a whole lot of like current stuff. So I kind of wanted to throw a top 10 tips video together and see if that couldn't help some people, because some of the gameplay that I see or battles that I'm in, even lower level opponents, things like that, not that I'm even battling myself, but just watching, it's just the small little fundamentals, small little tweaks, whether it's patience or other things, just those small subtle changes can actually go a long way and really help people out, I think. And I'm by no means a pro, by any stretch of the imagination, not even close to that, but I would like to consider myself as someone who does have a pretty solid understanding of the fundamentals of this game. So I thought it would be good to put something like this together, and hopefully it'll help someone. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be kind of all over the place here a little bit, but I'm reading off of a script that I sort of wrote just because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything. So like I said, this is going to be the top 10 that at least I see that could greatly, in my opinion, improve your gameplay. Now there could be 20, 30, 100 even, right, with all the different archetypes and meta decks and this, that, and the other, counters and blah, blah, blah. So those are different kind of tips, if you will, but that's just sort of staying with the flow of the game and kind of progressing with it. So staying on top of those things is another way to become better at the game, obviously, but these tips are just fundamental, like they're foundational in my opinion. So the first one I'd like to speak about is building the right deck, building a proper deck, right? Now this is not, I want to say this real quick, this is not the end all be all. If you follow this, then you will win every single ladder match. That is not what this is. But ideally, typically, you're going to want certain types of cards within your deck, so that way you can go into battle with a strong chance to at least compete. Right? No matter what, you're going to get hard countered. You're not going to win every ladder match. It's impossible. So just kind of keep that in mind, right? So again, none of this stuff is like set in stone, perfect. But to building a quality deck, ideally you're going to want at least one splash card, like a baby dragon, wizard, something, ice wizard, something along those lines. Now, ice wizard serves a little bit of a different purpose, but still like a splash element. You want one of those types of cards. You typically want to run at least one building. Now, it can be argued, I've done this one of two ways, whether I'm playing in war, like doing my war battle, or even just on ladder. You could run, in my opinion, you could substitute a building for something like a mini P.E.K.K.A., right, which kind of can serve the same purpose, but only when you're playing certain card types, right? So like a hog rider, for instance. To me, having a mini P.E.K.K.A. or a furnace against a hog, almost the same, right? Now, the difference there is likely your hog is going, I think it will actually still get a hit if you just run a straight mini P.E.K.K.A. on it. But a furnace, if you place it right a little higher toward the river with the fire spirit spawns, it should be able, with the arena tower, it should be able to completely shut down a hog rider. So there are some differences there, but then you can sit there and say, well, what if you don't face a hog and you face a royal giant? Mini P.E.K.K.A. against a royal giant, but the royal giant can obviously hit the furnace, and obviously kill it as well. But my point is like you can kind of play around with that a little bit, and I still recommend a building in a deck, but I would not argue if someone decided to go with what I just said, like a mini pack as an example. So you're also going to want at least one or two spells, and I say smaller spells probably, but they don't have to be, right? A lot of people run Zap and Log. It's almost like you have to run that. It seems like at least 8 out of 10 battles, you're probably going to be glad that you did. But you can also run something like Zap and Lightning or Log and Lightning. Typically, I watch how many reset. When I say reset, like a Zap reset on an Inferno Tower or something like that, those types of cards, right? Whether it's Lightning, whether it's E-Wiz, whether it's Zap. So I don't try to flood my deck a lot with those types of cards as well. So it's a little more versatile, right? But you want to make sure you have the right amount of spells in there. You don't, I shouldn't say you don't. Typically, you won't want to run 3 spells or more, right? Of course. Now, I've seen some funny YouTube videos out there of people rocket cycling and or even spell cycling. It seems to work, but that's just that's just for fun, in my opinion. I don't think that's really something that you want to lean on to continue to climb and get better. And especially that's what it kind of comes down to, right? You want to learn the different cards and the different decks, and you want to learn how to manage your elixir, all those things, to get better at the game. That's what I encourage people to do. It's a shift I had to make as well halfway through playing Clash Royale. Was like I had to stop trying to bully people, if you will, just be more powerful with cards. I had to really strategically understand the game, and when I did that, I got a lot better. So but yeah, so we want to have, I think I said the spells already, and then whatever your win condition is, right? Obviously you have a win condition, whatever it is, whatever your win condition might be, and then the supporting troops for that is ideally your typical deck. So again, those things can vary, but at least try to have some of those elements in your deck, and you'll be at least well-rounded enough to be able to compete. And like I said, you will get hard countered. If it does, just suck it up and just move on to the next battle. So that leads me into my next tip here, which is to know the various archetypes that are out there. I mean, that's one thing, as the meta decks are another thing as well. We'll kind of get into that one, but there's obviously the bait, there's obviously the beatdown, the bridge spam, cycle, hog cycle, miner cycle, things like that. And the advantage to understanding all the different archetypes, especially when it leads into sort of meta type decks, is you can gain a significant advantage if you know what your opponent is running, right? So typically if you see an ice golem cycled in the back with archers or something like that, or you might be like, hey, I'm probably going to be facing 2.9 expo. Or if you see an ice spirit at the bridge, and skeletons, and then they defend with a cannon and then you drop a musketeer, well, you're probably going to be playing 2.6 hog rider. So I think understanding that, you or having a good knowledge of that will just give you a slight edge on your opponent, because you know exactly what they're running, right? So you know what their win condition is, you know how they're trying to beat you. So that's half the battle right there, being able to fight through that and play the right cards and mess up their cycle, right? Anyways, so I think that is also very important to understand those things. Now, let's see what we got here. So, I got another note here about just speaking about the whole hard counter thing. Sometimes you might not have enough air defense. This isn't really a tip, just an FYI, but you don't have a whole lot of air defense, and then you face lava loon. I mean, you're probably going to you're done. I'm not saying give up, but it's very likely that you're not going to win that battle, so just move on. So now the next one is probably, I'm trying to look at my list here. I don't think it's the most important, but I will say once I learned this, my game overall just took a huge jump forward, as well as my win percentage, whether it was war or whether it was on ladder. It definitely took a huge jump up, and that's patience. Just to be patient. I mean, and there's two levels of patience, right? There's obviously the battle started, right? We're all at max elixir, and who's going to make the first play? I have a bad habit of always, because the types of deck that I run, even this deck here, I'm looking at it now, I have a bad habit of just wanting to run something first, especially if I start with Furnace, things like that, because they have to answer to it. But so there's that level of patience. You can just wait to see what your opponent plays, and then again, it's probably better that you do that, because you get an idea of what they're running, and maybe it's a meta deck, right? So again, going back to that tip there. So but just understanding patience, and that kind of leads me into some of these other ones here, probably tip 4, 5, 6, and 7 actually. These are all unique tips, but they're all kind of together. It's like a mindset all around. You can almost just classify these all under the patience category to a degree. But so with patience, right, is to defend and build a counter push, right? So one thing is if your opponent is playing and you're starting to notice the cards, then you can kind of tie in a little bit of how you're going to counter those cards. And also, as you're doing it, right, so they've dropped some cards, they're starting to build a push, and you got a good idea of what they're running, hopefully, especially in the latter part of the match. You, of course, should know by that point, what they're running. You can start to think how I'm going to defend, see your card cycle, and know how you're going to counter push, right? Because as they have dropped their troops, you got to be very smart too, as far as you can't let them be max elixir, right? So then they can defend your counter push, things like that. So you got to be strategic about it. You can't wait too long. Don't leak elixir a lot. I think there's times for it. Most people, probably everyone, doesn't like to leak elixir, but there's times that you just have to do it, depending on rotation and what they're playing, etc. But being able to defend a push and then being able to have your cards in the right rotation, and throughout the battle working to get that rotation, to build that counter push, so that way you can push really, really hard. And they're going to have to obviously try to defend, but with their push, hopefully, they're not going to be at max elixir, things like that. So obviously you're not going to be at max elixir, but you're going to have a strong counter push. And by the time they're trying to defend that, you are also building up your elixir back. So things like that. So defend and counter push. And that's kind of like patience, right? Because you're not just rushing and running all over the place and constantly being at 0 elixir, 1 elixir. Eventually it's going to catch up to you. You may think that you're pressuring them, but more oftentimes than not, you're going to lose because you're not keeping a good conscious of or good, like, I guess, keeping in mind your rotation, right, in your cards and your cycle, none of that stuff. You probably lose sight of your win condition, so it's just not good to continually, like, spam all over the place. Now, obviously, there's P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam. Obviously, that's the staple of that deck, running Bandit at the bridge, things like that. But anyway, so being patient and defend and counter push. And now these next 3, I would say, which is 5, 6, and 7, is don't overcommit, and when to let a push die or a troop just die, and your overall elixir management, right? So don't overcommit. So a lot of times you will see this kind of leads into the push, letting a push and troop die, but you will see like a push coming, and let's say that it's barbarians or something like that, right? And they're half health, and you have some archers down here, and on your side that are going to kind of chip away at them. Well, sometimes I'll see people just drop poison, or they might drop poison on barbarians that are full health just as they're coming across the bridge, and then they'll snowball them. Even if all the barbarians do not die in the poison, the snowball was overcommitting. There was too much. You didn't need to snowball for the sake of trying to keep them inside of the poison so that they would die, because now you've used 6 elixir to counter their 5 elixir, right? They're building elixir by that point as well. So they're going to have elixir advantage at that point. And your tower, depending on what else was happening, but let's just say it was that, right? Because they defended a hog rider or something like that, right? You ran a hog rider, they defended with barbarians, and the barbarians are coming down. You poisoned, snowballed, right? You're at an elixir, disadvantage, and your arena tower could have just sniped off the barbarians and killed them, right? So don't overcommit. That was a wasted snowball, and you're again down elixir. So it's small things like that. And it kind of leads me into when to let a push or a troop die. Or, a troop. It could just be a single troop, right? If you defend and, with a muskie or something like that, and you're running some kind of a giant muskie, I don't know, some kind of a deck like that, and you want to get that giant in there or something, but there's an Inferno tower that's been dropped that's half health or something, and you use he ran a hog rider or something, I don't know, he ran something that was on your side, and you dropped a musketeer. Well, at that point, and you're down elixir at that point, you're not going to be able to build up your win condition push. So just let it just die. Let it go, right? Don't try to support something. My point is do not try to support something that is not going to be hugely beneficial. It doesn't have to be hugely beneficial, but worth it, right? Like worth all the elixir. If you're only going to get like 100 damage on their tower, it's probably not worth it. Just be patient. Going back to patient there, number 3, and relax and just let it all reset, right? And try to keep your mind on your win condition and do not lose sight of that. And sometimes I do that multiple times throughout a match. So that's when you want to kind of understand a little bit more of when to let a push die or a troop die. And then elixir management, right? It's very difficult. There's 2 things. I guess these are probably more advanced tips, which is like card counting. Most people don't actually recommend that. What I say is instead of really focusing so much on card counting, just focus on maybe the 1 or 2, maybe 3 hard counters they may have to your card. A simple example would be like Skeleton Army, right? So you have Skeleton Army, they have Zap or whatever. So you obviously got to try to keep in mind of when they're back to their Zap. So that way when and when not to run your Skeleton Army. If you can out-cycle that, then it's probably a good idea to run Skeleton Army. Small things like that. And let's see, so there was card counting and just overall elixir management, right? Obviously, if someone drops a musketeer, okay, well, they're at 6 elixir, right? If you drop it at the same time, you can, but you're never going to be in line with someone. So trying to just at least have a general understanding of how much elixir your opponent probably has based on what they're dropping and how they're defending can dictate how aggressive you can be. I still lean always toward being patient versus aggressive, but you have to understand a little bit, at least have some pulse on your opponent's elixir and sort of how much they may or may not have at the time before you start really trying to push. Because if you overcommit or too aggressive and you cannot defend and you're at an elixir deficit, which you will be, or like lower on elixir or whatever, then I think you're going to be in a bad spot. And that's usually what happens and then you cannot recover because you're going to have to continually try to defend, and your whole game is gone, and you're going to probably lose the battle. So, and let's see, number 8 here is to remember your win condition. It's crazy enough, but obviously you can go in there and be like, oh, I'm running, minor poison or some bait deck or something like that, gob barrel, this, that, and the other. And you're like, well, obviously I'm not going to forget my win condition. It's not so much the win condition. It's more of the cycle that you have. If someone disrupts your cycle, which should be the goal, you should be trying to disrupt people's cycle, right? And once you understand what they're running, like 2.9 Expo, well, don't let them stack an Expo and a Tesla, right? And they're just going to drop Ice Golem in the front or something like that, right? So don't let that happen. So I think it's important to just keep in mind more of your cycle and that your win condition stays intact. I think that's the key to that tip. And number 9 here is going to be remember your opponent's counters and keep their win condition in mind, right? Those are kind of like one and the same. I've kind of already alluded to that a little bit, but it's once you've learned their win condition, you should have, again, a significant advantage, right? As long as they're not going to hard counter you, you should be able to win that battle. And again, as long as you're patient and don't rush, and remember, there's a lot of time in this game. That's the thing about it. People think there's minutes, right? I mean, people think, oh, I gotta win this first push and just 3-crown them. I mean, just slow down. And I promise you, if you implement the strategy of patience, I promise you your game is going to get better, and you know when to let pushes die, and when to defend, how to counter push, those kinds of things. And last but not least, number 10 is, like I was telling you, is a little bit more of an advanced technique, but it was the card counting. I talked about that a little bit. But again, going back to that, it's very challenging. I've been able to do it, but it's pretty hard, and I've actually gotten away from it purposely, and that is just not to try to remember all 8 rotations and all of the cards, but just the significant ones, the ones that really counter your win condition, your deck. Those are the cards you need to hold on to. Like Inferno Tower would be one if you're running Beatdown, as an example, as a small example, an easy example. Well, if he drops Inferno Tower right on your Golem, then you need to keep track of that Inferno Tower when he's back to it. Now, there's obviously a chance that he'll be able to cycle to the Inferno Tower, even if it's not quite in cycle when your Golem is dropped or even crossing the bridge. But, hopefully you'll be able to then know, how am I going to counter that Inferno Tower or reset it or support the Golem in a way that it will help defend, push through the Inferno Tower, right, and get to the tower, and all those things. So I do recommend trying to learn some of that, but before I put it as number 10 because, like I said, I think it's more of an advanced technique, but just learning the first 9 steps, I really, really think that it will significantly make your game better. I have a pretty bad habit. I mean, you can just look at the deck that I'm running right now, and right now I have a little bit of fun with it all, but this deck here, let me just look at it on my phone actually, is not an ideal deck. But it's a fun deck. So this is not a deck I would typically run and or recommend. But I will say that with this deck, I'm very patient with it. It's obviously very heavy. So depending on how my starting rotation is, I will basically run Furnace, Miner, or Hog Rider right off the bat. And they're going to counter it with something, right? If it's a building, it makes it a little bit more challenging, but we'll see what they actually counter it with. And then if I have the Royal Recruits, I can drop them in the back. By the time they hit the bridge, I'm close to working up on, I don't know, 7, maybe max elixir. I can't tell you off the top of my head. But then obviously Mega Knight is usually shown in double elixir. My point is that this heavier deck is one that you need to be a little more patient with. And I noticed, I think I've run this 5 times, I don't know, and I've only lost 1 with it, surprisingly. And I felt like I was too aggressive with that loss. I even looked back and watched the replay, and I was like, yeah, I could have won this, but I just, I would like run miner, and it was tanking for the, the tower, it was tanking whatever, and because I had Musketeer, half health Musketeer running, and obviously you could run miner on it, and the Musketeer could get some hits on the tower, but it just wasn't smart because he had skeletons. He countered the Musketeer for a better elixir trade for him. So I just was aggressive. I overcommitted, and I supported something I should have just let die. What I could have done, that's when I rewatched the video, what I should have done was I should have just backed off, reset, and started over. And I probably would have almost easily won that battle. So, and it was against a level 12. I mean, not that it ultimately matters, but still, it's just, the point is patience is key. If I had to pull something out of this entire thing, it's patience. Elixir management, all that stuff, it's key to victory, obviously, but patience is big. So I think that's it. If you guys have any thoughts, or if I missed something, I know I kind of rambled a lot. It's kind of hard to articulate all of this in a video. There's so much more that I would want to say, and even trying to probably talk about it through actual battles, but I feel like having a setting like this where I can directly speak to it and not be focused on war or battle or anything like that would be more beneficial to this video. So I hope that one of these tips, if not all of them, helps someone out there. And if I miss anything, feel free to comment below or any of those things, and to add to this list. And even if I'm off on something, I could have very well been. I've said a lot of things here. I tried to take the best notes I could, but these are tips that I have used that have helped me tremendously, and I hope that they do the same for you guys. So until the next video, I think I might upload one tonight or probably tomorrow at the very latest, and I'll probably start doing some more ladder gameplay, and maybe even do some of the classic challenge battles in a video. So hope you guys enjoyed, and hope this helps you guys. Until the next one, have a good one. Peace out.